going into medical device, you're learning about these new technologies. You're kind of gravitating towards the ones that are actually life-changing for people, and you're kind of influencing that in some way, pushing that technology forward. I'm helping to develop the technology that will end up being truly life-saving.
We are out here in Tampa, Florida with somebody who came from the nursing background, who was able to transition into medical device sales with one of the largest medical device companies at over 6 figures. And today we're going to be diving deep into his story and learning more about how he went from being a nurse to breaking in with one of the top companies.
Sorry, I'm kind of having like a epiphany, a little revelation here of like my experience. Like I wanted more money, but I wasn't willing to do anything to get more money. And then I had an option that came available to give me more money, but I was too afraid to do it. And I came up with all these excuses, like you said, 3 calls, just over and over and over. Well, I don't know. You got to tell me for sure, blah, blah, blah. But that's what I wanted.
That's why I got on the 3 calls with you, because I'm like, man, just let me change your life. Please just let me give you the opportunity to see what's the other side. Because I know once you do it, we're sitting in Florida now talking about 6 figures, medical device sales, all the good world.
I never thought in a million years I'd be doing 8 interviews to try to get a job. And for me, it felt like they were kind of trying to weed people out. And it was like this, if you get through the first 2, but we present this obstacle for you and you're like, well, I don't want to deal with that. They're like, okay, well, we don't want you.
Welcome back to New to Medical Device Sales. I am your host, Jacob McLaughlin, and we are out here in Tampa, Florida with somebody who came from the nursing background, who was able to transition into medical device sales with one of the largest medical device companies at over 6 figures. And today we're going to be diving deep into his story and learning more about how he went from being a nurse to breaking in with one of the top companies. And so today I get to bring you all the special guest, where I'm going to butcher his last name because it's Hawaiian and I can't do it. So it's Randy Kalimai.
Perfect.
But it's not how you actually say it, but we're struggling over here. Last names are not my strong suit. And so today we're going to bring Randy on to share his story. So Randy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited to have you on today's podcast, because we're going to actually get to go from the story of, hey, you're wanting to go from nursing into medical device sales. We're going to find out about that, but we're also going to learn about, a little bit about your background, what you were told throughout the process, as a nurse, but also in that world of, it took us 3 calls to have a conversation. And there's a lot of like, I don't know. And it's why I always make the joke of like, a lot of nurses we get on with are like, they're usually our most scared individuals. And there's a lot of good reason for that, and we're going to find that out. But I say that all because nothing makes me more proud than sitting here right now in Florida with you, knowing what you just accomplished, which like I said off air, is fake, and I put in quotations, is because it's so uncommon. It's not going to happen for 99.9% of people. And so before we get into your story and go more into that journey, can you tell us a little bit more about who is Randy?
Well, my name is Randy Kalimai. For all those Hawaiians out there that are listening, I've been a nurse. I've actually been at Baycare, the hospital system, for 20 years, and I've been a nurse since 2009. So, 16 years, in and out of different ORs. Pretty much thought I was going to stay in the OR the rest of my life. So, I've had hints here and there of different reps saying, hey, this would be good for you. This would be good. You should try it, this and that. And I'm like, whatever. I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to, make it, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, just ride it out being a nurse. I thought I was going to go kind of up the typical ladder where you just a regular nurse, you go to charge nurse, maybe you go to manager for a little while, then you kind of step down when you're 50 years old and you just kind of do whatever. And it's like just this riding out mentality, kind of no real ambition.
Yeah.
And
so when you say that, like, right, the normal path, right? Because we hear it all the time, right? And then like also maybe they throw in, well, if I get bored of that, I can go into nurse practitioner, right? But then we always have the conversation of, well, have you thought about how much school is? And the conversation is always no. And I'm like, okay, so do you want to go into $50,000 to $100,000 of debt to then do 2 or 3 more years of schooling?
Yeah.
while then all you just did was buy yourself a high paid job, because you still have to go work the hourly shift for that. And they usually cap out from experience between like 130 and 140, which is still great. But then nobody factors in the extra $50,000 to $100,000 of debt that they just brought on. So now you made more money, but now you're paying off more of that debt. And it took you 2 to 3 years to get to. And so you talked about something where you said, like, you know, a lot of nurses, we talk to so many nurses where it's usually they watch somebody's retirement and they're like, that person was here for 40 years. And they're like, I can't imagine. I've only done this for 2, 3, 5, 10 years. And they're like, I need to change. And why I'm just asking that is, why do you think there is the, you know, you kind of said maybe not so much ambition. It's like, hey, this is just what you do. This is what we've been taught. And I say this for everyone to know, is my mom's a nurse and has been a nurse for 20 plus years. So with that said, but why do you think that background goes into like, hey, this is just what we do, and they don't really question anything else?
I think it's a lot of comfort, to be perfectly honest. I think it's the initial draw to nursing is this idea that it's going to open so many doors, but there's tons of doors, but there's not a lot of money behind every door.
Yep.
So you could go anywhere, do anything. I got a friend that went from nursing, now he's with IT, and, you know, yeah, he got a little bump, but, you know, now he's got more on his plate than he's ever had before, and he doesn't know how to do half the stuff, and there's so many options. But once you kind of find one that you get comfortable with and relaxed in, you stick with that, and then there's this fear of just change, overall just change.
Yeah.
And you're comfortable. You're like, it's a 15-minute drive to work. I do the same thing every day. It's great. Don't have to think half the time when you're doing it, but It's comfort. It's pure comfort. And that's one of the kind of scariest, more kind of anxious things for me, is that I'm stepping out of that comfort. But I know that on the other side, once it's going to take a little bit of time to get comfortable.
Yep.
Once I get there, it's going to be amazing.
And it's going to be just like what you're feeling in nursing and medical device sales.
Yeah.
So I love that. We were having that talk off air. But one thing that you just said that I really want to hammer on is that fear. Like, I will just tell you, the clinical people I work with, I've never seen more fear in my life. And it's absolutely hilarious. Like, even for example, when they think they're getting on a call with me in our team, they feel like they're quitting their job that day. They feel like they're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Oh my gosh. And then, like, what is always funny is I always say the same thing. You know, I've just done this all the time. I'm like, okay, so let me just ask, are you someone who feels overworked, underappreciated? You're an hourly employee. You feel like you're capped. You hit your ceiling. You don't feel very appreciated with where you're at. You don't feel like you have much growth where you're going. And if you want to go make more money, you have to just go work more. And then you can't, all your work is tied to your hours. And so you could be 10 times working harder than the other nurse, but you're still going to make the same amount of money. And then you're going to get a raise and all that aspect. And then you're like doing 1 to 5, 1 to 8 people instead of you would like to do 1 to many. And many of the nurses we talk to feel like, I want to be meant for more. I know I'm meant for more to help people. And then every single time I've ever done that is every nurse is like, are you inside my head? Right? Because we know what it is, right? And you guys don't get appreciated by a lot of times the staff and the patients, right? And there's all that aspect. And then financially you're capped. And then again, if you go to the nurse practitioner, more debt. If you go take the nurse manager position, you usually take on way more responsibility for not much more money, right? And so we hear that consistently. But then what you just said is the fear of change, right? And like I say this to everyone, is it's super interesting for me, is like most people will actually stay in their own misery than trying something new because of the what if. But one of the things that I always have to work the most on with my nurses is, what if it goes right? When it's from the world you guys live in, it's what if it goes wrong? And it's constant, right? But I just wanted to kind of share that, because even now you've made the jump. You've now landed with 6 figures, med device company, like you did it, and you're still like, there's still a little fear there, right? And so I just share that because to anybody watching, is like, it's not like it just goes away. Right. But number 2 is, you know, I think it's very normal for every clinical I get on a call with is like, hey, I don't like what I'm doing. I feel stuck. And one of the things you said is that I really wanted to touch on is comfort. Comfort's actually what eats you up inside more than actually trying the thing, because at least if you tried the thing, you would know. And worst case scenario, you go back to what you already did and you probably make more money because you already got some more experience, or you got hired at a higher wage because you just came back. But more people are like, but what if I did it and I go, and then you all think you're broke, homeless, you never have a job again, and you're living out of your car. And so can you just kind of talk to that piece of like, it was a scary jump when we got on a call, right? And I know that, like I said, it took us multiple calls and we still were like, oh, all right. Like we got to the point where it's like, hey, make a choice. If you want to do this, great. If not, but for you, like what you just said, man, you left no stone unturned in nursing. You've been in it long enough. But for you, we know you love helping people because that's why you did it. But what made you actually get to the point where you're like, maybe I'm open to something different and looking at being uncomfortable?
For me, honestly, I would say when I initially went into nursing, I thought it was going to be a lot of autonomy. And it's kind of what they drive home in school. You're caring for your patients, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing this. And there's some autonomy, but it depends on where you're at. But at the same time, it seems like to me there's more and more like nursing political oversight. So you've got even a coworker of mine that just went from nursing in the OR to IT. And even in my situation, it's you move up and you think you're going to have more autonomy, but it seems like the more you move up, the less autonomy you have. And that, for me, just kind of kills me. I don't want to work if I'm constantly being micromanaged, essentially, or you have to do this, this, and this in order to get something approved that's going to benefit your patients. So for me, across the board, it's always been autonomy. And I feel like as I've gone up, I've lost autonomy. And then in conversations that I've had with multiple reps, learning of their true autonomy, 2 people on a team covering, a 1 hour, I don't know,
territory.
Like 10, 15 hospitals or something. And they've got to communicate and they've got to actually be professional and, mature and autonomous. That's what kind of, I guess, that was the door that I walked up to. That was the kind of like, I'm thinking of like Inception, planting the idea in my head. Autonomy, it's like, it's way more here than it is what you're having right now. And I was like, I got to check it out. Besides the fact that I was unfulfilled. I was kind of, I didn't really feel like I was helping people anymore. And I was just comfortable in the job and honestly not challenged. So this little idea of autonomy, I was like, what is that? What does that look like? And that's just progressed since. And I've loved it ever since.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that take on it, because I think for you, one thing I really appreciate about you is you think every move through very thoroughly. And even when we speak, what comes out of your mouth, we were just talking off air of like, you think about it to make the best move. But I also appreciate that about you, because we were joking off like, I'm maybe a little less of that. I maybe don't think as much and we just rock and roll. But the reason I say that is because with you in that aspect of it, you're trying to say, hey, I'm being real with myself, but this is what I'm told and I'm living it. But then you're actually looking at it and you're not staying where it's not making sense, right? And then what you did, though, is you also talked with a lot of other people to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I've heard. Is this true? What's your take on it? And you tested it, right? Because the one thing I just say that is so many times I hear people just saying, well, I heard, right? I'll just be honest, being in the hospital, that's the most common thing you hear from nurses is, well, I heard whatever they heard from somebody. And it's like, well, did you actually follow up or check any of that? And they're like, no, right? Because I think the one common thing that everyone hears with even medical device sales reps, like any rep that comes in, they're like, oh, would you drive your Ferrari in here today and all this stuff? And it's like, you don't understand, like a lot of associates are making 65, 85K. They're making less than the nurse actually is. And so it's just like, it's some of those things that come with it. Now for you got to that point where I really want to hit on this, because I hear this all the time from nurses. I got to the point where like I am helping people, but I don't feel like I am actually helping people. What do you mean by that?
Well, I started out in the OR as a circulator. I mean, it's basically just a documenter. You there's not really much patient interaction or helping anybody. You're just kind of there as you're the doctor's assistant. Yep. And, you can, make yourself think in such a way, well, if I wasn't part of the team, then I'm truly helping the patient and that and whatnot. But it feels like a different mentality for me. I'm kind of there doing what the doctor says. Whereas if going into medical device, you're learning about these new technologies, you're kind of gravitating towards the ones that are actually life-changing for people, and you're kind of influencing that in some way. Mm-hmm. And you're still kind of I'm not physically going up to a patient and, taking care of them or, healing their cut or whatever, broken bone.
Yep.
But I'm pushing that technology forward. I'm helping to develop the technology will end up being truly life-saving. Like,
yep.
You've got all sorts of devices out there, obviously, but being that expert, educating, helping that doc ultimately make the best decision for that patient to give them, 10, 15, 20 years, depending on what we're doing.
Yep.
I'm in hearts now, so it's that's what we look at with some of the 80-year-old patients, but it's life-changing.
Yeah.
And you're not, like I said, you're not hands-on, but you're actually making an impact. And in the OR setting, you feel it, but it's like, to me, it's a much smaller degree than what I feel like I'm going into.
And I love that. And just so everyone knows, because I like to show where the world is going. It's like, for example, a lot of times, like the nurse inside the OR room, like does help, right? But a lot of times it's charting. It's taking a lot of notes, right? And just to give you guys an idea, like literally know of a company who is replacing that because they have AI and they have cameras and they can literally document everything and record everything.
Not surprised.
And that's actually a company like we know of that's actually doing that and making big strides into it because of what you just said of like, let's actually have that person doing more instead of just documenting, which we can just have a camera literally tell us everything that they're going to document, what time, and they'll actually be probably more sufficient with it and more in depth about what they need, right? So just that aspect of it. So I want to put that out there for like, I think about my brother in the Midwest when I told him about, hey, I was in a self-driving car, Waymo, because that's what we have. And he's like, the world needs to stop, right? And I just laugh because it's like the technology is going to come no matter what. But I just want to share that. But I really appreciate you going into depth because I think that's one of the things that a lot of nurses that I talk to is like, again, this won't hit for the nurses who are like, I just want to go in, I want to clock in, I want to clock out, right? But what happens and what I've noticed with a lot of the clinicals and nurses that we work with is they're like, I know I'm meant for more. I know I'm not living up to my potential, right? I even was just on a call with somebody who, at 25 years old has been doing it for 2.5 years and literally tells me, I already turned my 2 weeks notice into my boss and told him to start looking for someone else because I'm just like, I don't want to keep doing this all the time. And so I just put that out there for just nurses to kind of maybe think. But now for you found medical device sales. We kind of talked about the autonomy section, but you as a nurse, right? You've been in it for a while. What else drew medical device sales to you? Because like you said, you could go into IT, you could go do some of the other stuff with a clinical background, but what about medical device sales drew you in to where you're like, I want to learn more about this opportunity?
I think for me, I mean, it's probably very individual for me because I've always had kind of a knack for teaching. Yeah. I went into coaching for CrossFit. I volunteered at a library when I was in high school to teach, elderly individuals how to do things on the computer with the internet and stuff. And that's kind of always been my joy. So it's, even in this setting that I am right now, I love the teaching aspects. And so with the autonomy and with the teaching, I'd be lying if I didn't say that there's financial motivations as well. But, the teaching for me, it's you become a content or like a subject matter expert.
Yep.
You basically, especially with what I'm going into, you're telling multiple people in the room, like, this is the best practice. This is what we should be doing. You become that, I don't know what the word would be. You're just that, like, you're the expert.
Yeah.
They're consulting you. What do I do in this situation? What do I do? And again, it feels like you're teaching. You're bringing actual impactful changes to these patients to improve their lives.
Yep.
But my 3 has always been autonomy, the teaching, and the financial.
Yep.
And, that's again, as I've talked to more reps, as I've learned more and more, that itch just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to check this out, because that sounds much more appealing to who I am than driving 15 minutes, clocking in, doing the same thing every day, clocking out, going home.
Yep. And I want to just touch base because you hit on it, right? When the number one thing I see with nurses, which is extremely interesting, and it's not just nurses, it's everyone. But when we start talking about finances, everybody always is like trying to be like, well, but I don't need to make too much money because it's not. And like the one thing I just want to touch base on is there is nothing wrong with making money. Money is just a transfer of value, and we all have to pay our bills. We all have to support our families. We all want to take a nice trip every once in a while. We all want to do that. But what happens is when you get in certain environments, they demonize it, right? And I just say that because even, again, coming from small town Iowa, like even growing up in the family, like money won't buy you happiness. Money doesn't make you happy. Like people that make money are rude. Like there's all these fake things around money, which they can have experiences. And let me just make this really clear. Yes, money will not buy happiness, right? But I will just say it can also buy a dog, and dog is pretty much the same thing. So like there's that piece of it. But what I say to that is it's just understanding like we want to get better. All money is again, just transfer value. And if you make more, it's like, oh, I'm adding more value into it. And then again, yes, it's nice to get some big paychecks, but you'll realize that it doesn't change your life that much. Again, once you can pay your bills and do all this stuff, it's great. But I just share that because, again, that's the one thing I hear from nurses. Because, again, I have a mom who's a nurse who it's like, she went up, my buddy's a financial advisor, and she's like, oh my gosh, your job is stressful. And he's like sitting there laughing. He's like, no, it's not. I just get money and I put it in the market, right? And so why I say that is there's this mindset behind money, especially in nurses a lot of times, where it's like, oh, you make $100,000 or more. Oh, well, what thing are they going to label you? Are you a sellout, or it's bad, or you think you're better than us? Like whatever it is. And I just want to just touch on that because many times I hear that, and it's not just clinicals and nurses. I hear it from everyone we get on a call with. But many times with nurses, because if you're making 80, 90, 100, right? We talk to people who went and traveled, and during COVID, they're making 200, 300, right? Those days are gone. Things have changed for the nursing world. And it's like, okay, I'm working all of the hours to make 80K, 100K. I can't really go if I want to do the traveling. I have to stop. So there's all those pieces. But I just wanted to touch on that because it is okay to want to financially support your family. It is okay for a nurse to make $150,000. It is okay. And if anybody doesn't think that's okay, they're not paying your bills. So who actually really cares, right? They're not in your house. So I just share that because I think that's one thing I really want to always hammer out is, again, we talk about finances because everyone's like, well, why do you always talk about money and all this stuff? And it's like, because none of us live for free. And if you can go work the same amount of hours or less and make double the amount of money, that don't stink that you could go spend with your family or teaching people or whatever it is.
And that's kind of the funny thing, actually, when you're talking through that. A lot of nurses I work with, they want more. They want more money. And you're kind of stuck in this mentality of like, well, to get more money, you have to do more work. You have to take more call. You have to do more of this, do more of that. But they're always clamoring for more money, more money, more money. And then it's like you have a route. And it's kind of funny that I haven't really thought of it. It's you have this route to more money or an option, a door.
Yep.
But you're too afraid to go there. But you want it, but you don't want to do any change. And it's like, it's just overcoming that. Like, that's essentially all I did. And it's like, sorry, I'm kind of having like a epiphany, a little revelation here of like my experience. Like, I wanted more money, but I wasn't willing to do anything to get more money. And then I had an option that came available to give me more money, but I was too afraid to do it. And I came up with all these excuses, like you said, 3 calls, just over and over and over. Well, I don't know. You know, you got to tell me for sure, you know, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, that's what I wanted. And it's like you said, yeah, I could potentially be doing far less work, far less stressful to get it. Yep. Why didn't I just open the door when I had the chance?
Well, I just want to say I love that actually just happened right here because this is why it's what I get to do every single day. Yeah. It's literally that. It's why I start the podcast. It's why I share with this, you guys. It's why every time I get on a call, hey, you're a nurse, you're the most scared person I'm ever going to meet with, because we already know that. We already know the psychology you're in. We already know the mindset. And like, that's why for me, that's why I got on the 3 calls with you, because I'm like, man, just let me change your life. please just let me give you the opportunity to see what's the other side. Because I know once you do it, we're sitting in Florida now talking about 6 figures, medical device sales, all the good world. But before that, it's like all the what ifs negative and it doesn't go. And then again, this is what I just want to share out there is we live in a world that's a very victim mindset. And I'm just going to rub some feathers the wrong way real quick, but I just want to share that as a victim mindset. And if you don't change your circumstances, well, now you can complain about your certain circumstances. So I can always complain about money and being a nurse as just being a nurse and complain about my circumstances. And I will just sit here and tell you, you want to know who loves to complain about their circumstances? Nurses. They love to talk about the drama going on in their life or the things that are going on. And I'm going to get some flack on this, but I'm going to make it really clear. The number one advice I got from when I first got into med device sales is don't date a nurse. Because they will have all the drama. Your relationship will be all over the hospital, the OR, and all it takes is one bad relationship to ruin your whole job and career. And so we're laughing because I'll let you all take that for it is. And anyone who's serious right now is you're that nurse. So just so we're clear. But why I say that is you have the opportunities, but it's easier to stay stuck. And then again, it's easier to say, well, I talked to a couple reps and they said, and you didn't actually try it, but you just said, and now you gave yourself the out of why it couldn't work for you. Or, hey, I just threw in 3 applications. It didn't work, which we'll talk about this process, how it's different. But it's like, oh, you didn't actually try, right? And they just act like they tried, but then they get to stay in the circumstances of, I'm the victim, my life stinks, I don't make the money I want, oh my gosh, the world is out to get me, why am I here? The violin continues to play. Right. And that's like why you saw is like when I was like, hey, man, I just need you to trust me. And I'm thankful that you did. But a lot of times I tell people the hardest part for me every single day, it's why we do these podcasts to show you guys all the proof, is the hardest part for me every single day is having people call me, tell me how miserable they currently are. I show them the pathways on how we would do it. And then they make the actual decision to stay stuck. They make the actual conscious decision to be like, you've now just opened up my world to see something I didn't think about. You've answered every question that I could have had because I didn't know half of this. And now I'm going to decide because of whatever, finances, money, whatever it is. And that's the whole thing is I just want to put that out there for anyone. Go and look this up. You want to make money? You got to spend money, right? Scared money don't make no money, right? And that's like in the business world, we always say that is because most people try to do it for free. But then for some reason, the top athletes have coaches, mentors, people because they've never done it before. But somehow you want to come into a competitive world and have this world. So I just share that because, again, I want people to know, like, it's like you just said, it's at your fingertips. But are you in a place? And a lot of times people need 3 calls. They need time to think about it. They need to. I already knew, just so you guys know, I was like, I just need Randy to go do one more shift. I need him to go do one more shift. Have one more not good shift, and we'll have a good call. And so I just say that is like, I'm glad you bet on you, but I just wanted to touch base on that because my job is sometimes we can rub people the wrong way, but I rub people the wrong way because I just say the truth, and maybe they're ready to hear it, and maybe they're not. And so I just share that as every nurse has the opportunity to make 6 figures in medical device sales. They just decide not to. And then they stay, and then what a lot of times they'll do is they demonize the people who do go do better. And I will just sit here and tell you this is the thing that gets said all the time is you ever heard of the crab in the buckets? The crab in the buckets are the people who, the crabs, what they do is they're coming in, the crabs grab them and pull them down. And I will just sit here from experience, many times that is the nursing world. When you go off to leave because you're not doing the 30 years or you're not doing whatever, and now you're getting to better your life and go make more money and have more freedom, they're going to take shots at you. They're going to say why you're not as good or whatever it is. They're going to try to do the backhanded guilt comment. Or like we've seen it, nurses do that and they come back into their same hospital and now they're treated differently by their former coworkers, even though nothing changed and they didn't treat them any different. It was just they see that. And I just want to state that because the life you want is on the other side of fear, but most people can never get over fear and they let fear truly dictate their life in almost every way. So one thing I want to talk about, because here's where the fear comes from, what I hear about all the time is, Jacob, I paid money and I got a degree. And now I'm going to throw it all away. And what I try to help people understand is you're not throwing it away. You just made yourself that much stronger of a candidate because of it. Can you kind of talk about like, hey, what was it like being a nurse And some people feel like, well, now I'm just throwing away, so it won't help me. How did your background in nursing help you land a awesome opportunity with a great company?
I mean, first off, everything you said about like the crabs and everything, that's totally true. I'm like playing it all through my head right now. Like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. And then it's kind of like you gravitate towards the like-minded people. And I'm not trying to diss anybody, but like, everybody feels that way, and you kind of gravitate because you want to be part of that group, and you feel ashamed, like branching out and all that. But as far as the career and everything, I mean, I was fortunate enough to get with a hospital that paid for my education, so that I was fortunate enough to kind of walk away with no debt. I know other people don't, but during the experience in the course, it made it so much easier to have conversations with I wasn't like, what is the aorta? What is, this, what is that? And
you weren't awkward.
Yeah. It wasn't like these basic questions we had to get through. I had to kind of like bore the reps with just to get to a point where we could actually have some conversation.
Yeah.
Could kind of bypass all that. So you have all this training. It's looking back at it all, it feels like everything I've done has built to this, instead of just like, this was what I was going to do the rest of my life. I can see how the nursing, for me, personally, the nursing, but also the CrossFit coaching, the woodworking that I've done, trying to do side business and stuff, all this is kind of built up to what I'm getting into. It feels like it's all prepared me for this. And then when I've been giving my 2 weeks notice, kind of telling all the important people, what's going on, one of their suggestions was to just keep my licensure. It's like $90 a year. It's 24 continuing education hours. It takes, you can do it in a day.
Yeah.
You can do it in a couple days. There's even packets where you do them over the course of the 2 years and then turn it in and you're done. It's not difficult. So you can always go back.
Yep.
There's always an option to go back. But, for me, I don't think I'll want to. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's going to be any desire to. It's the way I've explained it to other people is nursing opens doors, but it's like opening doors to like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And then where med device to me, as I've gotten into it, it's opening doors to like a coliseum or something. Yep. It's not this little itty bitty single family home.
Yep.
There's so many options, many options.
And the one thing I just want to touch base on that is like, yeah, you can keep your license, and you could, like, even if you needed to on the weekends, and don't tell PRN, right? Like, you could still do that if you need some extra money and you want to just hustle. Like, there's those options. But like you said, I do just want to touch base on this. When we talk about the crabs and the buckets and stuff, that's going to be in every industry. I'm just saying there's a lot of certain ones, and I'm just saying this with the most love, and usually with a financial income or a financial ceiling, a mindset falls into that. So that's why we ask, hey, how much do you make and all this stuff? Because just by the amount of money someone's making, we can tell usually in the mindset of like kind of where they're at, right? There's a lot because there's a lot of self-limiting beliefs or why they can't do stuff or whatever it is, right? But why I share that is because when you get into medical device sales, guess who you're with? Other people who want the most out of life, other people who want to make 6 figures, other people who want to go. So you're actually leaving this crab in the buckets of like, no, you shouldn't leave. And now you're the weird one out to join this one where you're now fitting in with the group. The only difference is this group lives a way different life than this group.
Yeah.
And you're now having that fun of everything that you're looking for. But to also say that what people miss is, they're like, well, medical device sales is just ortho. It's just shoulders. That's all they think about. But what they don't understand, it's like, I always explain it like when we're talking about nursing. Well, are you in the ER? Are you the OR? Are you the ICU? Are you in the NICU? Are you going into private? Are you doing there's so many different divisions that you can go into, and even in nursing. It's the same thing with medical device sales. Are you in cardiac? Are you in capital? Are you in neuromodulation? Are you there's all these different places, and that your background just makes you a stronger candidate. And you're going to have the opportunities with all that experience to financially be in a spot where you can go back to what you were making with nursing, but work not even clearly half the amount of hours because of the opportunities you'll have, right? Even from a clinical, a training, educational role inside of medical device sales and all of those spaces. But that's the thing that most nurses don't understand is they don't know that world, right? And so they don't see it. So I'm really excited to hear you say like, hey, I'm seeing the Coliseum, because it is. Like, this is the opportunity, because I also just want to share this real quick. Because when you are the rep, not only do I get to go talk to the scrub tech and do I get to talk to the nurse, which is great, I'm also talking to the surgeon. I'm talking to the PA. I'm talking to the NP. I'm talking to the anesthesiologist. And we all know, again, financially, that's a different life. Well, now you're in those world, but they're actually like even though, yes, the nurse and the scrub tech are extremely important, the conversations I had with the surgeon was never what they had with the scrub tech. And so like you're now in that world, and then you can have that business conversation. You guys can go and have those conversations that probably aren't happening in the other worlds. And also like you're around other business, like many people I know in med device sales have businesses, or they are driven, or they do other things compared to maybe not being as driven. You're around more people who are doing CrossFit compared to not doing CrossFit, right? There's those aspects of it. But then also like we just had one of our surgeons on the podcast. He talks about having 10 businesses. It's a different mindset, number one. But number two, you're in the room with them. You're providing value to them in a whole different world of then documenting the case. They're looking at you as a resource.
Yeah.
And then, I think one of the funniest things is like when I have one of our new people come in and they're like, this surgeon asked me to come out on his boat. And it's like, well, yeah, you must have done a pretty good job. So he likes you and all that. But the reason I'm just saying that is it opens up opportunities and doors that might not happen in that other world. Right. And I always want to put this because I want this to be to nurses. And I just want to say this. At any point, if anything ever seems quote unquote unfair, it just is going to be a reflection on where you're at and your mindset, where it's at. Because for someone who's saying, well, that doesn't seem fair, it's all that. It's like, well, if you're a nurse, you could be that person. You could do that. But then they just stay in why they couldn't. So I just want to put that out there because you did it, and now you're going to have some fun opportunities. I can promise you, with especially the division you're in and where you're going. So I love that aspect. And now, so we talk about, hey, you looked at medical device sales. Hey, you are taking your background. It's not just throwing it away, right? But then let's talk about what's the difference of like the interview process of becoming a nurse and getting a job at a hospital as a nurse, and the world you found out about medical device sales. Because this is one of the common things I have to teach people when they first come into me. They're like, hey, this is how I got my last job, and we have to have that discussion. So kind of just from what you learned in your experience, what was it like to get a job as a nurse?
Well, for me, I guess it's unique, but it didn't feel like I had to try. Like I ended up seeking advice on resumes. And before I actually signed up for the class, I was actually reaching out to guys, professional resume writers and everything. And I looked at mine, and it was like a 2-year-old wrote it, and what they came up with, and it's like professional, like beyond college level. And that 2-year-old resume got me in interviews, got me jobs. It was nothing. It was like one interview. And, a few interviews that I've had actually were they just handpicked like 3 people randomly and told them I was hired essentially and just talked to me. And they said, well, you're hired, but we have no idea what questions to ask you, what to do, what's going on. We just know you're hired, and they just told us to talk to you. So it's like nothing. It's like child's play in nursing. And even in my my old but still current position, I'm a charge nurse, so I'm in some of the interview processes, and the questions are just very, basic level, simple. You answer them just right, you're in.
Yep.
It's easy to get hired, and I don't want to downplay the position, but it's easy.
Yeah. Well, just to help you with that, just because of this, we always make the joke, because I've done this with literally lots of people, is as long as you have a certification and a heartbeat, you're going to get a job somewhere as a nurse, right?
Pretty much.
That's normally how it goes, and we've seen it. And then again, just so you guys know, every single person I've ever said that to a nurse, they've just given me that exact same, yeah, you're pretty much right. We've seen some stuff, right? So the reason I'm just saying that is that's what we've seen. Now, because then what happens is the nurses want to make that transition, but they think the 2-year-old resume and just throwing it in now is going to be the same. And what you have to understand is you're coming into a place where you're going to be the average rep makes $177,000. They get a car, they get great health insurance, they get good matches. A lot of times they either get a car, they get their car paid for, all the gas, all the insurance, cell phone bill, all this stuff. And they're working with surgeons and work-life balance and all of that aspect. I always say, guess who wants to do that? Everyone. Even not nurses, right?
Exactly.
Everyone wants to do that. And so, again, let's talk about what was it like going through the process of a medical device sales and how it was maybe a little different than just throwing it into a application?
So different. So I took my 2-year-old when I first worked at one of the hospitals in Safety Harbor for Baycare. You know, anyone that works there will know what I'm talking about. But I had a rep. It was Boston Scientific, and it was for urology. It was basically a bladder stimulator. She's like, "Oh, you got a great personality. You should do this." I handed in my 2-year-old resume and never heard a word. Never heard anything. And I did the same kind of thing. I was like, well, you know, it's just not meant for me. I'll just go back to this, screw them, blah, blah, blah. You know, the kind of the crab mentality still. But then before I even started the program, it was the same situation. It was, you know, throw the resume out. No, we went a different direction. No, we went a different direction. No, we went. I'm like, what's going on? This is like, how is it that I can do this with nursing, but I can't do this in this?
Yep.
And that's when I finally signed up and I realized what I'm looking into. I think I had for this position, I think I'm at like 8 or 9. And that was only because of a relocation issue. And then it was no longer an issue. So we kind of restarted some of the process. But I never thought in a million years I'd be doing 8 interviews to try to get a job. And for me personally, it felt, in a way it was good. It felt like they were kind of trying to weed people out. And it was like this, you know, if you get through the first 2, but we present this obstacle for you and you're like, well, I don't want to deal with that. They're like, okay, well, we don't want you.
Yep. And
I get their aspect of it. They're going to put a bunch of money into you to train. They're going to pay you to drive around and, you know, pay a car stipend and all these other benefits that you can get with it. And it's like, they don't want somebody. They want someone that's going to work hard. Yeah. They want someone that's going to do the job. Someone's going to put the extra effort in. And so they're going to weed you out.
Yep.
And I mean, from what I've heard, I probably had the easiest interview process of some of the people that are in the program. And it was still drastically harder, crazy harder than any nursing interview I've ever been in. I mean, we're talking like a 10-minute interview of, what's your name? What do you like to do? Do you like ice cream? Yeah. And then, okay, you're hired. Yep. Versus, I think I'm at 6 months, 5 months, interview process, 8 interviews. Feels like they were really trying to get to know, make sure they're making the right call, weed out any people that weren't, you know, right for the role.
Yep.
And again, going back to your original topic, you know, being able to have those conversations with them on a nursing level, even just a basic nursing level, made the whole process a lot easier. And I'll admit, when I got to about 5 through 8, I had Roxy in the back of my head the whole time. Just, Randy do this, Randy do that, Randy. And it made, for me, the interview process a lot smoother. The first few, little rocky, a little rough, and that kind of smoothed it out with conversation with her. But they're just trying to weed you out. They're trying to figure out who they want.
100%. So that's one thing I want to notice is that is the whole goal of a medical device sales interview, is to weed you out. Because I'll just sit here and tell you, we had a TikTok go viral with the nurses, and the number one comment was, I would never do 3 interviews. I would never do 8 interviews. And it's like, well, and that's why you all don't make $100,000. That's why you all stay stuck, because you won't, but then you will complain about your life. You will complain about this stuff. And it's like, you don't care enough about going in. Like you said, the amount of entitlement that comes in, well, it's like, oh, I'm just this. So if you don't want me after 2 or 3, it's like, well, we don't need you, because just for every one of you, we have 1,000 applicants, right? We want people who really want to do it. Now, one thing I want to state is, you said that your process was still about 8 or 9 interviews, but you noticed that your process was a little easier than maybe some of the other members inside of the program. And I just want to put this out there with a big smile on my face, is saying, you want to know why? Because you were a nurse. You had a great background. You had a great clinical background. And so if you use that, it's the way. And that's why I always can sit here and I will die on the hill of, nurses can always break into medical device sales. The background will always go in. And that's why we say there actually are easier people to help break in. We just have to get them out of their own way, of their own mindset of being scared. And then we can help change their lives. But I just want that to be stated, because you did, quote unquote, have an overall easier process, because the objections you're going to have to overcome are maybe a little different because of so much experience in what you've already done and the background you already have, right? Now let's talk about this. Is everyone thinks that they're going from nursing, that they have to do sales, that they have to have this massive quota, that they have to do all these things. But what a lot of people don't think about is, well, maybe I could do a clinical role. Maybe I could actually do something where there might be a little bit of a quota tied to it or something, but it's not going to be your whole paycheck. And it's not, you're going from, again, and this is one thing I just want to state is most people are going from an hourly, I make $20 an hour, $40 an hour. But what happens in sales and medical device sales, you're not doing hourly. You're doing your work and then you get compensated. And that's why people can't understand. It's like there might be a rep who goes and works under 4 hours, but closes a $30,000 deal. Now, let me just make this really clear. That rep's not getting $30,000. That's revenue in the company. But you stop tying your time and your hourly pay to your income because of the different world. And so even in the clinical, you'll still get a base, a salary, but they might give you a commission on if the team performs, right? So can you just kind of talk about that for you? Because most nurses get really scared because they're like, well, I can't do sales. I don't want to be a used car salesman, all that. And then let me just say this, used car salesman is only because they sell you something you don't need. But if you actually have something that is helpful, you're not a used car salesman. You're actually a great rep, right? So kind of what was that like going from like, hey, you're going to nursing, but you didn't have to just do sales. Like there was a lot of other options because of your background.
Yeah, I mean, I was interested to find because I thought every rep was a sales rep. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't realize the different levels or positions they can, associate, clinical, TM or full line sales rep and so on and so forth. But like, for me, it's an easy transition when it's clinical, especially some of the products out there. Like you look at, BD and, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, all these Abbott, everyone that does a pacemaker for me is easy to pick on because, you see pacemakers all the time in cardiac surgery.
And that's your life.
So it's, you're okay. So like there's Impellas. It's just a left ventricular assistive device. So when we do open heart, we have to worry about stuff like that. And there's nurses on the unit that know everything there is to know about that. And so half of it already. So when you go into a clinical role, you've already know half the job. It's an easier transition. You don't have to go like try to sell that machine to anybody, but you can, like for me, it's going to be case based. Yep. So I do have a quota, but it's case based.
Yep.
And it's going to be a shock for me that, to get the salary that I'm going to get without clocking in. There's days where I know I could go in, do one case, be done, and I'm still going to get that same pay.
Yep.
And there's not this stress of, okay, now I'm done. Let me go try to sell a few more products. It's for me, it's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Perfect fit.
It gives you that freedom. So just, that's what people miss about this is like you just said, is what I always say, when you get a base, that's guaranteed money. You don't have to get out of bed and you will get paid. Now, you got to get out of bed because otherwise somebody else is going to come and take your opportunity. But again, like you just said, though, is like when you can say, hey, I'm going to make on my base as much as I used to make working full time and do all the stuff. And then everything I do on top of it, that's just bonus. But I need to just touch base on what you just said. What you just said about the nurses being able to do everything in the ventricle and all the stuff, can we just take a second of nurses don't see the value in that because that's your life. But to a medical device company, oh my gosh, there's so much value to it because let's talk about, well, I need sales experience. You know what's harder to teach an ADP rep? What we just talked about.
Exactly.
Oh, they might know the sales process, but they don't know all of the anatomy. They don't have that clinical background. That's why nurses they can either do clinical or sales in this world because they have it. It just depends more on like who they are as a human being, right? But that's what I just want to be because most people don't understand the actual tools and the value they bring because they think just everyone knows it. Everyone knows that, oh, you've been a nurse for 20 years and you've done this world, or you've been in for 5 years and you have this experience. Most people have never been in an OR room, never been in a hospital. So you're already a leg up there. So I just want that to be an encouragement for nurses out there is like most people downplay, but that's why I always I'm trying to upplay you guys is you actually have the best. And then talking to a doctor, because here's what everyone thinks. What's the STAR method? What's the challenger sale? What method are you going to use to make this sale? It's like, or you could just be such an expert in what you're doing and then seeing that the doctor has trouble or needs something. And then can you just add value by just being like, hey, doc, have you ever thought about this? Or, hey, from my experience, and just going into it and it adds value. That's what actually happens in medical device sales is if again, especially the reps, they're going to have a quota. Yes, they have to sell, but when you get really good and you sell a product that you love that truly makes a difference, you're not selling. You're just helping. And that actually turns into sales. And that's what I just want people to kind of think about, because you said that's such a overlooked thing of everyone's like, oh, I'm a nurse, so whatever. But it's like, that's what makes you all so valuable. And every time I look at the nurses or I see hospitals, I'm like, there's all these diamonds in the rough that if they just realized how much value they brought to a company, they'd all be smiling and being like, I'm going to make more money and not have to get out of my bed if I didn't want to than I have to by doing these 3 shifts. But just so you know, every person I talk to, it's 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 shifts that they're doing because they're trying to make more because of the hourly pay. You break that mindset of, I'm not working hourly anymore. I'm working of, I did 1 case today and that was enough. And some days you're going to do 5 cases and it's going to make itself up. But there's that piece of it. And so I really appreciate you saying that, because that's a thing for nurses is you guys have so much value. A lot of you just don't see your own value.
Yeah. And that's kind of what actually a rep told me once, is when he was trying to break in, he was a nurse. He went around and he didn't realize how many products that essentially reps deal with. He just kind of went into their supply closet and he's like, oh, there's this company, this company, this company, this company. And he's like, I use this every day. It's simple. And you're half a product expert already, because you troubleshoot, or you know the ins and outs, or you know this is better than that. And it's I don't know. It's looking back, it looks silly that I didn't think this stuff before.
Yep. But let's talk about it real quick, because I think there's a reason for that. Let's talk about, you said this off air, but let's go, because everyone told you should just be good at it. But where did that frustration come from, getting told that and then eventually reaching out to me?
Yeah. That was a fun little experience. So, I mean, for me, my journey actually started in November of last year. I was talking to a few reps. I'm like, I think this is the direction I want to go, blah, blah, blah. Let me, look at getting my resume, look at these companies, look at this, look at that. And as I started talking to, because I probably have like 15, 20 reps roll through at least, just my department alone. And my department's only 5 ORs and it's specialized. So I can only imagine how many reps roll through the main OR with all their specialties.
Yep.
But every single one said, you have this much experience as a nurse in the OR. You have this much experience as a charge nurse. It's going to be cake. You sign up, you apply to whoever, it's going to be fine. They're going to hire you. It's going to be no time. But then I kept the back end of that statement was always, it's going to take time. And it was always like, it took me 2 years to do it, but I got it. It took me 5 years to do it, but I got it. And so the frustrating part for me was, if I'm so great and all you're talking me up so much, why is it that I can't just put out my resume and application and boom, I got a job? Why is it that I'm constantly getting these emails saying we went another direction, we went another direction, we went another direction? And so finally, after, I think it was from like January to March, maybe even April, it was just constant. Apply, go on LinkedIn, try to meet with new people. I mean, honestly, all I was hitting was connect. I just kept hitting connect. Oh yeah, you look good, you look good, you look good, you look good. Okay, I made connections, and I didn't really make any connections, but that's another point. It was all this, it's going to be easy. It's going to be easy. It's going to be easy. And I hit probably April into May-ish, I think is when we were finally talking, and I was like, this is not easy. And, you kind of touched on the point that, was big for me was the coaching aspect of it. And, it brings me back to, all my other analogies that I've come up with before. If you've got an issue with your pipes, you're going to call a plumber, because either they're going to like help you do it or they're going to do it for you. Mm-hmm. I can't get in on my own, even though it's supposed to be quote unquote easy. So I need coach. I need someone that's done it. I need someone that can help me. And that's with your program, a lot of people were just talk on LinkedIn. But the thing that I saw with yours was you were just kind of like, here's a podcast, here's testimonials, here's this, here's that, all this like research, which should ring, you know, be like, hey, nurses, pay attention, research, data, there's something to back it up. And so I was like, let's do it. Let's just jump in. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was scared as all hell to just jump in. But finally I went for it, learned a lot. I mean, I think I was only doing it for about 3 months before I finally landed it. But there was like, I tell my wife this all the time, there was no direction originally. It was just like, it's going to be easy. It's going to take time, but nobody could tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And I got to a point before I signed up where I was just like, I would sit at home for an hour or two, like, what do I do next?
Yep.
And I was stressing, I was freaking out. And then I was like, you know what to do. It's simple. You need someone that knows what they're doing to kind of take you to the next level.
Yep.
I did it.
Yep.
Jumped in.
And I want to just say this real quick, a couple things. Number one is, they all say it's easy, but it's super challenging. And again, I just put all, like what we say, you watch this podcast, all I put is all the proof out there. And then my favorite is I always say, when's the last time you bought something like so much, took a video, sent that person, told me how much like it, or did a podcast? And they're like, never. And I'm like, but we have hundreds. And they're like, but still, what if about me, my specific situation? And right, that's what everyone will do. And that's okay. But I just say that is, you did jump. It took 3 calls to make you jump. And I finally was like, hey man, I believe in you. I want you to go. I need you to believe in you. And I know it was scary because it's always scary when you make a jump to bet on you. Right. And let's just talk about this. It was a financial investment, right? It's not $2, right? But the reason I just asked that is, you know, I remember asking you in the first month and being like, hey, coming in, how do you feel? Do you feel like it, you feel a little bit better? Do you feel like that? Can you just, we don't need to go into like the details of the program, but like from that, like going from being lost, not knowing, to coming in with, and you got to see people every week getting hired in medical device sales in that community, and you saw us coaching. Can you just talk about that real quick for a second of like how that helps you, especially even like, I'll just say this, even when nurses join us, I'm like, you still got to go to work, right? They all think they quit their job and they still freak out. And even the first week or 2 weeks, they're still freaking out and they're like, oh my gosh. But it's like, we just try to do everything to make you feel as secure because we know it's scary. We've been in your shoes and we've helped a lot of people. But can you just speak from your personal experience? Like, what was that like the first even month inside the program, going from being like, I'm skeptical, I don't know, I'm kind of scared, to finally jumping and betting on yourself?
I mean, for me, jumping in was just, I was so nervous about jumping in, you know, and you touched on the financial aspect of it. But for me, to be perfectly honest, that was like the kick in the butt, you know, that lit the fire. It was like, you showed me commitment. Yep. And I was showing you commitment. Yep. And it was like go time.
Yep.
So, I mean, I used to, the first like week, I would, you know, everybody would go to bed and I would just go for a walk with my headphones in, listening to the modules and just hearing okay, this is what this is. You know, these are the different roles you can have. These are the W-2s, not to go too deep into it, but it was just like this like template, this outline. And I didn't have that. I was, like I said, good. LinkedIn resume is good. Connect. That's all I had. And I was going nowhere. And
getting told that it's going to work out, or it'll be 2 years,
eventually
5 years, or whatever.
Eventually it'll happen. Eventually. And it's like, but then starting, it was just a guide. It was, you know, a handbook. I mean, you go to a different country and it's like, you should go here, do this. That's what it was. And it was stressful. Yeah. You know, because you guys were asking for us to do a lot, but it's like, you know, the theme throughout was you're doing the job to get the job. And I think that's like, that should be the logo or the mission statement or something, because you see doing this is because you're going to do this in the field, or you're going to do this, whatever. It's just this guide, and it brought so much comfort, even though there was so much stress involved. You know, I had made the financial commitment. I was trying to network, but I had the comfort of, I'm being guided. I have help. I'm going to get through this. It's going to happen. It just brought that. I mean, I can't describe it. It's just like, you got help.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. The reason I'm just saying that is because we work with people who are scared, but like, we've been in your shoes, but it's like, I always say our line is, it's your first time, it's not ours.
Yeah.
right? We know it's scary. We know it's stressful. But like you said, we're prepping you guys. Let me just make this really clear. We're not getting in people at $60K. We're getting people at over $100,000. Like, that's why it is stressful, because we're also breaking barriers and doing a lot of things to be like, hey, you want to make six figures right away? Because like I just told you, I just talked to someone who, what you're making, it actually took them 6 years to get into. And they've been in the industry and they were doing way longer hours, like it took them 6 years, and you're now in your first year going to make just as much as them. And that's why I just say, is like, it saves time, but that's why we stress you and then do the job to get the job, because, you know, like even I said, you might be a little stressed, but I already know I'm going to get a text from you and I'll be like, man, thank you so much. I'm already ahead of people who've been here for a year, because we've just done it enough and we understand what they're looking for. And you're not drinking from the fire hose totally blind. Like, you're going to have an idea. And I just want people to hear that, is because so many people are so too proud to ask for help. But it's like when you finally do. But number two, I just need to say this, right? When we talk about a financial investment, I learned this with personal training. And it was when I charged $25 for a half hour, nobody showed up. The moment I charged $60 for a half hour, everyone showed up, and I doubled my clientele, and everyone was better because they were more qualified. But what people never understood, the money, yeah, of course. But like, let me just say that there was no problem of getting training clients. There's people who need fitness in America, right? But it was, what people don't understand is the financial commitment. It's not for us. You just said you hadn't been doing it, but then now you got the guide, and now you're waking up. It's kicking the butt for you. And now what you decide, and what's what we always tell people, I'm willing to bet on you. But for the first time in Randy's life, is he willing to bet on himself? And that's the biggest thing that people miss. And because of that, but why we do it is we know the ROI. We know that that's why we're here and we're smiling and you're happy and excited. We know that it's like, okay, it paid off and you're happy. And it's like, yeah, that's why when we ask, can you come on here? You're like, sure, right? And share the story. So I just say that to people out there. Now, to really wrap this up, Randy, like for you, like first off, it's so much fun to see where you started with us and just in such a short amount of time where you're at now, right? And a lot of times it just came into you actually just doing the belief in yourself, and me being like, look at you, look at what you bring, look at the quality you are, and you go and do it and you go execute on it. But what's your advice to that nurse right now who's watching that still watched everything you just said and is still on the fence if they want to stay with what they're doing or not?
One of the biggest things would be, there's always a way. So actually, one of my friends that's a nurse, he was like, he basically said there's no excuse, because he's like, you just take out a loan. You know, if you know there's going to be return, maybe if you don't play your cards right, maybe it'll take a year or so or whatever. But if you play your cards right, and then that's the funny thing about the program is you're kind of trying to teach people that mindset is like, don't change your life how it is now. Use this extra income to build yourself up. There's that mentality there, but I don't think there's any excuse. I mean, like you said, if you've listened to this whole thing, you're a nurse, so you've already got a strong background. So it's going to make it, I feel bad for some of the younger people in the program because they don't have that background. So it's going to be a little bit harder. I'm a little envious of them too, because they have more time so they can, actually hit it harder than I can. But you're already kind of like prepped up. You know how to talk. Most of us to talk to doctors, other nurses, you know how to talk to people in general, anatomy and physiology, how hospitals work, all this information already. So you're just going in and you're just adding knowledge to it. Mm-hmm. And if you're worried about financials, your motivation is to get people those 6-figure jobs. So you're going to be able to pay for it in the end. My friend was like, you just take out a loan. I got a friend that can get you a loan for low interest, blah, blah, blah. You can come up with so many excuses, but there's really, the only excuse is, are you willing to do it? Are you willing to put in the work? If you're not, then don't do it. Yep. But if you are, it's a perfect opportunity. I don't regret it at all.
Well, I appreciate it. So, a couple of things. Number one, you didn't even have to take out the loan, so life was great.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, I just also want to just say is like, you can always go back. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest thing with nurses is the fear of what if it doesn't work out. Yeah. You can always try it and go back. And guess what?
You're not getting fired.
No, and these hospitals will take you back with open arms and all this stuff.
And that was to help hammer the point home. I mean, my director, my boss's boss just said, no problem. You want to come back? I won't hesitate. I'll take you anywhere in the hospital. I mean,
It's just
and,
proof.
And the same thing, you know, there's plenty of traveler jobs. They're trying to get nurses right now.
Yep.
There's no issue going back. But I mean, I think that's, I think it's not the wisest move to go back to that, because I think you have so many opportunities. I mean, I've known many people that just go clinical and then field sales trainer type role.
Yep.
And you're just training all the clinicals. You're traveling around the country. I mean, it seems so much better of a life.
Yep. There's so many options and then you're 100%. There's so many options. But what I want to just kind of end with is just understand what you said is so true. The excuses. And that's why I made that LinkedIn post I've shared about this is we all have excuses and we will be able to validate them. We can make them all work in our life. Well, I financially can't do it because of this. I don't have the time. It's not the right moment in life. You have the excuses. The only thing you have to understand is the excuses don't serve you. You can have them and you can go tell all the other nurses of why you couldn't do it, and they're all sit there and you all complain and feel bad for each other and then sit in that same bubble. But it doesn't serve you for the next year of your life. It doesn't serve you in the next season of your life. So it goes back to, like you just said, is are you ready to stop living where you're currently at and make that jump? And that's why I would say is that's what's the hardest part for me is I get people who will call me and we'll talk for an hour and they'll tell me how miserable they are. They don't like it. They don't like their boss. They don't like where the job growth is. They don't like all the stuff for an hour that they're just telling to a random stranger. And then I get to say, what are you going to do about it? And they say, stay stuck. Most of the time.
That's what I said.
And for a couple times, right?
Yeah.
But stay stuck. But because of the fear.
Yeah.
And then they let fear. But let me just sit here to end our podcast is you decided to look fear in the face and say, I'm not going to let you win again. I've let you win a couple of other times, but I'm not going to let you win today. And even though you still did it and you were still scared, the fear's still there, you still decided that like I would say, the 5 minutes from now, one choice is either going to happen. You're going to let fear win or you're going to go over fear, right? You're overcome fear. What happened when you decided to make that one choice to finally not let fear dictate your life?
I don't know if I speak for all nurses, but I think a lot of us get in our head and we, you know, like you said, the what ifs, this could happen, that could happen. It's the natural mindset of a nurse is that fear of the worst thing that could possibly happen. And I think what I knew was that if I said no, like, screw you, I'm going to do it myself. Everyone said I can do it. If I said no, there would have continued to be that, well, nobody's hiring me. This isn't happening. Maybe I shouldn't do this. That fear and that doubt and that weighing you down and that stress and that anxiety. And it's not fun to deal with. And when I said yes, I'll admit there was excitement, relief, just like, a weight off of me, because my position is, we don't have to get into it like you said, but I wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. And that was the thought process. Continue to be unhappy or get with someone that can walk me through this process and lead me to something better, that can lead to happiness. And when I was like, no, I'm going to prioritize me, like you said, that felt good. Yeah. Rather than I'm going to stick with it and just deal with it. I Lord knows what I would have been. Maybe I'd be divorced and on the street because I beat myself up or something. But I actually took a chance, and it felt good. And now we get to sit here and say, welcome to breaking into medical device sales at over 6 figures with one of the largest medical device companies, and you did it in just several months. It's a crazy feeling. Crazy feeling. I just want to say I'm proud of you, and congratulations, man. Thank you so much for coming on today's show. No problem. Thank you for you and all the coaches for everything you've done. Yeah. I appreciate you. And if you guys are wanting to learn more about how we can help you become like Randy and break into medical device sales, you guys can click the link down below. But just understand, we're just here to help you. We put all these resources out here because we want you to win. And just know we're here to help. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. But otherwise, keep going after your goals and just know it's possible. Peace.